Okay, YouTube, we are live. It's like we're waiting on people to get here into the chat. Give it a couple more minutes. So today's live, we're going to be going over a lot of my campaign, what I'm going to promise to do when I get up to DC, once the people actually vote me in for the 7th Congressional District. A little bit first about, got to get this moved. I want to tell everybody kind of about what prompted me to run. And really, it was what happened with the Sheriff's Department. I had no plans ever of trying to be a politician or go into the political field. Got to delay that, start and install. But anyways, I am going to be running for U.S. Congress in 2026. One of the big things that we're going to be doing is fighting the police corruption. Honestly, I know a lot of America's gotten tired of seeing it. We've gotten tired of seeing the videos on YouTube. I mean, we watch a lot of the content because it's out there. But who really likes seeing, the cops harass people, abuse people, violate the constitutional rights? And many times it's that the cops have no clue what they are and aren't allowed to do. They're not really taught this in the academies. As a matter of fact, they're not taught any law in the academies. They're only taught processes. Police are taught process, how to go on fishing expeditions, how to prolong stops. They're taught very bad things that are just ruining the name of police around our nation. We've got, far too little oversight into police agencies. Seneca is a great one to bring up when we talk about bad policing because they rarely report it. I'm actually working on getting some discovery on Seneca right now. See, Seneca decided on October 29th to go ahead and, this is when actually William Lynch decided to work with Seneca to go after me on the charges for 2 false reports and 1 interrupting a judicial proceeding. And they literally did this out of spite because I'm gathering evidence. They're in, I think, one of the top 5 percentiles. Somebody's told me I've got to gather the evidence on that. Seneca's really bad down here in Southwest Missouri. Just the fact that I was hit with a car and they decided to investigate their state worker and come up with charges on me were something they completely lack jurisdiction. But police reform's going to be really, really big when I get into DC because we've got to restore the institution of policing in our country, both to save police lives and to save the lives of the public. So, restoring true police accountability. If I've got the policy, I should go ahead and tell you guys. One of the ways that we're going to do this is every state's broken up into districts. Missouri has 8 congressional districts. So we have 8 representatives in Washington, D.C., 7 of which are Republicans. Is it 8 or 9 in Missouri? I forget which. I think it might be 9. But anyways, the majority of it's Republican aside from St. Louis County. If St. Louis County, they're always going to produce a Democrat. So you got to work with who's in office when you get there. That's the bottom line for every district. And if this is, St. Louis County is a Democrat-run area, we know the Democrats aren't really into corruption or any of that, right? But we're going to call out corruption with the YouTube channel, and they're not going to like it in DC. They're not going to like transparency, especially a lot of the swamp. That's the big way that we're going to drain the swamp in DC is by bringing the transparency of the YouTube to the audience in DC directly with one of your congressmen. But for every district, we need to have a specialized oversight to the local police that can bring federal charges. It'll mean a little bit more spending, but it's going to be to ensure the safety of the people of the United States. A bad problem is the judicial system. And in the judicial system, we just allow way too much corruption. See, anybody who's got money, they're able to hire an attorney. They very rarely face the charges on small things or speeding tickets. These are mostly to try to give officers a reason to pull people over, to stop your egress and regress, uh, just to allow them to stop people, go on a fishing expedition and see where they can find crimes. Because municipalities, police departments, they count on revenue. And I've been told this by James Altick. He counts on that revenue that he gets from making citations, which is that much more important, that they should be filing their tax reports and reporting the money that they're taking from the community, which they have. I'm hearing they haven't done in years, but I'm going to subpoena those tax records now that they have me charged, because my claim of corruption in Seneca, the retaliation that they have against me for going to do the investigations, that's the only reason I have charges out of Seneca. That, and because I'm exposing the police corruption. Heck, I was assaulted. They wouldn't even do the investigation on that. That's a federal offense by you, Seneca. So really, really bad on your part to, or William Peterson's part, I should say, to threaten, coerce, and then make good on his threats of coercion, because I'm not going to be intimidated by anybody, especially Mr. Peterson. He sent me many dirty, threatening letters. He's come after me very, very maliciously. Shout out to you, Ace Forever. I like that nickname, Ace. Ace, true accountability expert right there. But one of the big things that we're going to have to do is end the municipal fines, because when police and municipalities count on money coming in from revenue from their citizens breaking the law, right? Because they only claim this money off of people coming into their town, breaking the laws. Well, we've got a right to stop them, fine them. And that's when you invite money into something, you're automatically inviting corruption. So stop inviting money into it, and you'll stop having as much corruption. Because when there's no incentive, when there's no money to go after, you'll find they won't be in it for that business. We simply need to end it, and we need to end that for the safety of the American people. We've got a really bad prison system in the United States right now, and this is where I know a lot of people on the right are going to hate me. Prison reform is something that needs done, and it needs done for the safety of the American people. If Republicans were going to sit there and say that we care about the community, we care about everybody, well, then you've got to care about the victims. You got to care about, all of these people that are getting out of prison, that are going back into prison, usually for a repeat offense, a probation violation. There's really strict terms. When people get out and they reoffend, on so many of these times, you got a victim on the other end of this reoffense. Somebody got hurt. One of your members from the community got hurt. Well, and this has a lot to do with just the process inside these institutions. I'm not saying that these should be suites and, destination places. What I'm saying is that we need programs inside the prison to help people that got locked away because they were unsafe to the society, they committed an atrocity. At some point, we're planning on letting these people back out. We need to have programs set up to make sure that they're successful when they get out. Not just probation to try to put them back into the system because the government gives you money for having those people incarcerated and institutionalized. It does too much harm to the public. So we do need prison reform. I know Sheena Eastburn, and she showed me a lot of her statistics. Mo Prison Reform. I've talked to them and seen a lot of their statistics. Their whole mission, dream.org, their whole mission behind doing the prison reform is simply to try to make the communities a safer place, to give people who are incarcerated a better chance to be successful when they integrate to the public when they come out. So it's definitely something that needs to be talked about. These are bipartisan issues. Everybody's got to have credit for it. So until we end the partisan politics in D.C., I'll tell you none of this is getting done. But we need to end that partisanship, and we're going to. A lot of people from the left and right in D.C. are coming into what they call the uniparty. I think that sounds a little cliche and dumb. Let's stop calling it the uniparty. It's just a tap. It's a true American party. That's what it is. It's what it should be called. Now, Trump stole one of mine yesterday because I've already had this as a talking point for a little bit. Trump hit a little bit on this, but I'm going to bring this to your attention. Trump mentioned ending the cartels' warehouses. Essentially, to what extent to I think Congress needs to do this, and that's wage war on the cartels. The cartels are responsible for killing tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of American lives every year. That's something that, on a large level, we need to end. Now, you consider the money that the cartels have, the equity that they have, and I think that's in large part the corruption of the United States government in the past, where they haven't done enough because they've had money from the cartels. They made money out of seizing a lot of illegal narcotics and things that come across that border. But those things are killing Americans. The president hates that. I hate it. Everybody out there should hate it. That also is part of my two-part solution to the border crisis, right? Because we built a wall. The wall is great. But why are people trying to cross that border, right? I know many people on the left that, say, well, we've got to help those brown people because they're victims of the cartels. They bring a valid point there, right? That's the number one reason that people cross for amnesty, is saying we're victims of the cartels. Well, so are we. The cartels have waged war on America for years. And there's so much that we could take to rebolster our Social Security Administration, the SNAPS program, so many things in America and Mexico that would both benefit from that. So there's a lot on the table and a lot to be had for those conversations going forward with the border crisis, the immigration policy, and it's got to be ended in a lot of ways. We need to protect our families and our communities. Back in the 1700s, we started policing in the United States for safety, not for revenue. Policing has become about revenue. Every time you see one of those cops sitting on the side of the road with a radar gun, it's a reason to stop somebody who is egressing or regressing through the United States. Our communities need protection from the police. They need protection from bad guys. That's why we have police in the first place. But we shouldn't be at a point in our society where the NFL is having to go and end racism on the field. They're having to write so many things. We've got to have change. The NFL is not wrong about that. we do need change, and it's time that the NFL starts getting involved with us. If you're going to write it on the fields, be willing to talk to us, and we'll write it on the bills. We've got to save our Social Security Administration, right? I talked about where we could get that money. Trump's plans on tariffs. It's something that it would essentially hurt our country so bad if the Supreme Court ruled against Donald Trump in that. Because if they rule against Donald Trump, now they're saying America has to go and pay back X, Y, and Z dollars. These are things where you've got an overstep on so many of these issues that the president has power on, that you've got liberal justices, people on the left wanting to take everything into a challenge into the Supreme Court when the president's fixing America. That's treason. I mean, that's got to end. Before I really got into even real estate or anything, I drove tractor trailer on America's highways for 15 years. Back in 2020, I worked COVID. I was on the Dollar General dedicated account. I ran many loads of essential goods. I saw a lot of my 15 years. I've seen the trucking industry change from when we were on paper logs to these ELDs now. I've seen a lot of DOT hours of service rules and regulation change as well. Now, America's highways, number one, they need to be safe. We need infrastructure change so that we have roads that are worthy to be driven on, not just, roads. Highway 69, Oklahoma, all the way down to Texas, and down to the Texas border is very, very rough. Has been for years. Tulsa, they're always doing construction. You get to the upper northeast coast, you have sunken grades. I mean, there's just so much need for infrastructure in the United States that we've got to start erasing the deficits and fixing the problems, putting the money where it needs to be in America. That's was a big policy of Doge and trying to wing out the corruption, because when we've got the left spending money on really stupid things, and on the right too, because I won't say that there's none on the right, but that's why we need to have oversight. That's why things need gone through. Transparency needs to be there. The power needs to be given back to the people. That's why I support Tanwa Downing and his mission, what he's doing. So I'm definitely on that fight. The big reason that the 70-34 hour rule, anybody who drives trucks is going to know a lot about the rules. Those of you who don't, feel free to get in the comments and ask about it. The reason that we have hours of services for safety, the reason we have the 70-34 hour rule break, was to ensure that drivers get adequate home time while ensuring that they're not spending too much time driving behind the wheel. Problem with this is you started setting deadlines, and when you set deadlines, you set time constraints. The number one thing that always caused me to push harder on that throttle, in maybe some areas where I shouldn't have, was that if I don't get this load there by a certain time, I'm not going to get it there. I get in trouble. I could lose my job. I could be facing penalties, problems at work, and that's not good. It's very, very stressful. Barack Obama, in his first administration, he had the Secretary of Transportation add some rules to the trucking industry. One of those big rules was the 8-hour, 30-minute rule break implementation. She said that this was going to save so many lives on America's highways by making drivers take a 30-minute break within 8 hours of coming on duty. This is something that ended up getting passed into law. The president could end this with executive order, and some of these absolutely should. But when I get into office, we're going to change these in Congress. Now, Eric Burleson currently serves on the Transportation Committee. These are proposals that I've contacted his office about before when I was driving, and other offices I know. Talked to Billy Long about this when he was in office, and he was referring me back to somebody who was on the Transportation Committee. I think that might have been Burleson at the time, but I'd have to double check. We've got to fix these. A driver does not need a 30-minute break within 8 hours of coming on duty. What that does is sets the driver up on more time constraints. So now he's got to get a load somewhere on time. He's got to take that break, and he's got to factor where he's going to be able to take that break. You've got to factor in extra stops. It's going to, cost more fuel. It's going to cost the company more money, the driver more money. So we do need something to ensure the drivers get adequate home time. And, companies need that assurance that drivers are going to be able to be on the road to transport the goods across the country. So I think maybe implementing a home time policy would be good in the trucking industry. And for the two regulations that we need to remove, I hear you there, Mr. Trump. We're going to remove the 8-hour, 30-minute rule break implementation, and we're going to remove the 70-hour, 34-minute rule break. That's going to mean that drivers are going to have to maintain by the 10, the 11, and the 14. This doesn't include anything to get rid of e-logs, because that has, it's made things more transparent. And, I had a guy, I won't say his name, but he did tell me to violate some laws on my ELDs. And I said, sir, we can't do this. We don't have paper logs anymore. I said that really wouldn't be a good deal for me to try to get this down the road. He wanted to push me to do that, right? I had to call whistleblower protection, because I said, no, I'm not unplugging my ELD and driving down the road. We're not doing that. This is my career. This is, the safety of people. We're not going to do this. We have the hours service rules and regulations for a reason. So ELDs they made everything be more transparent. So I'm not looking to get rid of ELDs. But if we implement something for driver's home time, and you end those two regulations, you're going to increase the gross tonnage driven across the United States. You're going to bring down the price of goods, because you're going to have a lot more a lot more time for drivers to be able to get it there. Or drivers are going to have a lot more time at their disposal to be able to drive. You're going to open up America's highways, which are going to mean that you're going to have less clutter in the truck stops. You're going to have, rest stops that are going to be a little bit more open. So this is going to help parking. And that's another thing is there's almost not enough parking for drivers across the United States right now. When we increase the number of trucks on our highways, we increase the number of drivers, we've got to increase the number of parking spots, because this is a big problem when drivers are having to park on the side of the road because there is no truck stop, there is no rest area for them to park at. That creates a safety hazard to both them and the rest of the public having to be parked on the side of the highway for that. My friends over at CEI and some of these other companies out here, that big ones, that they understand what I'm talking about. And I know some companies have that policy out there where you cannot park on the side of the highway. I think USA Truck has that. Kevin calls it a sitting duck policy. Kevin's the owner of USA Truck. Know him, been in a lot of meetings with him. He's a great guy. I used to be a trainer for USA, so I've trained drivers on America's highways, and the number one thing for me has always been safety. But this will increase revenue, meaning more money in the drivers' paychecks, their wallets. It's also going to mean more tax money. So that's going to help the government as well. Another big, this is probably the biggest right here, or one of the biggest, right, is ending the prohibition nationally on marijuana. This is something that has been shown to be helpful both medically. So it helps with too many things, right? We've done studies on marijuana, tobacco, alcohol. This is shown to be not only the least harmful of the three, but also have the most municipal benefits. And as a country, we can't keep allowing states to tell their citizens that they can't have something that is good for them. States that have legalized it have also gotten a great boost in revenue in their economies. So I don't even see any more reason to try to keep the prohibition going. This is one that needs to end. There's regulations just like there is for alcohol, 21 and up. Smoke responsibly if you do. Edibles. My doctor hates that I even smoke in the first place. There's a lot to get fixed. Shout out to the Brian Craig Show. I called into the Brian Craig Show yesterday. They were talking in large part about the Epstein files. Trump said, "Go ahead and release them." He's like, "I'm not in it." He said, "It's got nothing to do with me, so go ahead and release it." And hell, I almost feel the same way about the Epstein files. I just, they need to make sure that what they're doing is right. So Congress needs to look at all sides of this, and they're going to vote on it. The president's calling for the release. And, as long as, there's enough there for yeah, sure, go ahead and release it. We'll see what ends up happening on that. There's a lot of issues in the United States and in the world right now that we've got to fix and address. One subject I like talking about, especially with Democrats, is the reformations, right? The payments to the ancestors of slaves. Now, I think it's worth talking about. I think a lot of these things are worth talking about either way, whether, whichever side of it you're on. If you bring up conversation, you're going to allow for debate. That's absolutely something that I want to debate is the topic of reformations. First off, let's not act like slavery doesn't still exist. Was slavery bad? Hell yes, it was bad. It's probably one of the worst things that we've ever, seen or heard of. Human rights, people had human rights. Slavery is evil. This still goes on. Look at Africa. Look at the CCP. We have many problems worldwide with slavery. Now, why should we give the ancestors of slaves money when it's not over? Here's my opinion on this, right? You want money? End slavery. Do it worldwide. You should be commissioned. If you can go and end slavery, that evil that happened to your ancestors, which we recognize as very bad, right? Nobody's saying that wasn't bad. That was awful. I'm sorry that your ancestors went through that. We still deal with a lot of that today in the police issues. So there's more that needs to be ended than what was just ended in slavery. We need to restore the institution of policing. That's going to help save countless lives across the country, police lives included in that. But we need to have a better system. And if you want reformations, go in slavery. We'll happily pay you for it. This Friday, I am going to be on the Brian Craig show. I'm going to call in. We'll go over a lot of these topics again on his show. For now, I mean, that's about all that I have. You guys got any questions for me? I don't see anybody in the live chat right now, so we'll see you guys on the next episode. Till then, like, sub, and hit that bell notification. We'll be going live a lot throughout the next year or so while we're running this campaign. It's a grassroots campaign. We need to start this from the ground up.